My name is Rachel Collins. I'm 34 years old, and I used to think strength meant not needing anyone, that if I built a life solid enough, beautiful enough, no one could ever walk away from me again. But I was wrong. The man I loved, the one I trusted to stand beside me no matter what, once looked me in the eye and asked if I was cheating on him. With my own father. A father I had never met until he knocked on my door one quiet morning and changed everything.
But I'm getting ahead of myself.
This story doesn't begin with betrayal. It begins with absence. I was 7 when my mother left me at the State Children's Home in Eugene, Oregon. I remember the way she knelt in front of me, her hands holding mine, her nails chipped and trembling.
"Just a couple of days. Sweetie," she whispered. "I'll come back for you. Don't cry, okay?"
I nodded because I believed her. At that age, you believe the people you love won't lie to you. She stood up, walked out the door, and never looked back. At first, I waited. Every footstep down the hallway, every creak of the front door, I ran to the window. But it was never her. I waited 1 year, then 2, then 3. By the time I turned 18, I wasn't waiting anymore. I'd learned not to cry over what wasn't coming back. You grow up fast in foster care. You learn to keep your head down, keep your grades up, and keep your expectations low. But I was stubborn. I worked harder than anyone. I graduated top of my class and earned a scholarship to Portland State University to study interior design. People thought it was a strange choice. Why not something more practical? But I knew what I was doing. Spaces made me feel something. When no person could hold me, a warm room could. When I had no one to come home to, I imagined building homes filled with light and warmth for others. I moved into a 400-square-foot subsidized apartment on the outskirts of Portland. Peeling wallpaper, rusty heater, paper-thin walls. But it was mine. I painted it in warm tones, burnt sienna, dusty rose, soft amber, and placed a single framed photo on the mantel. It was of me at 7 years old, sitting by a window, waiting. That image haunted me and fueled me. I swore I would never be the girl waiting again. From now on, I was the builder, the one who stayed. I didn't have many friends, not real ones. Work colleagues were nice enough, but I kept a wall up. Except for Ethan. We met in foster care. He was 13, I was 11. He'd just lost his grandmother, his only family, and stood alone in the courtyard while older boys shoved and laughed. I was shaking when I stepped in.
"Back off," I'd said, "or I'll tell Mr. Henderson."
They laughed but backed off. Mr. Henderson didn't tolerate bullying, and everyone knew it. Ethan looked at me with something between shock and relief. That was the beginning. We shared meals, secrets, plans. He wanted to design houses. I wanted to fill them. Even when he aged out of the system and I stayed behind, he visited me every weekend. We'd sit under the old oak tree and talk about everything we'd build when we finally had a future. At the time, I didn't know those quiet moments would shape the rest of my life. We both made it out. He went to college for architecture. I went for design. Years later, fate brought us to the same city, Seattle. We reconnected like no time had passed. Only now, he was tall, calm, magnetic. Still Ethan, but more. And I was a little less guarded. Not much, just enough. We started meeting after work. Coffee turned into late-night conversations. He never pushed, never pitied. He was the only person who didn't look at me like I was missing something. One night, as we sat on my balcony, he asked, "Do you ever feel like you've made it?" I laughed. Define made it. "You've survived," he said. "You built a life. A good one. But is that enough?" I hesitated. Sometimes I think it has to be, because if I want more, and I can't have it, what then? He didn't say anything. He just reached for my hand. Things unfolded slowly. Neither of us had family. We had each other. And when he proposed on my birthday, at a quiet restaurant filled with pink roses and soft jazz, I couldn't breathe. Not because I was shocked, because I was terrified. Terrified that saying yes meant giving someone the power to leave again. But he opened a small velvet box, pulled out a delicate bracelet with a ring attached, and said, "You've been my family since the day you stood up for me. I don't want to live without you. Rachel, will you marry me?" I whispered yes. My voice broke. He pulled me into his arms. For the first time, I wasn't the outsider watching happiness from afar. I was living it. Our wedding was simple, just a few close friends, a retired professor, and Mr. Henderson from the children's home. No relatives, no speeches from parents, no giving away the bride. Just Ethan, standing under an arch of wildflowers, tears in his eyes as I walked alone down the aisle. And I remember thinking, this must be what it feels like to belong. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city. Big windows, enough space to dream. We combined our skills, architecture and interiors, and started our own business, Collins & Company Design. Clients trickled in. Word spread. The dream became real. We were happy, but there was still an ache I never spoke of. Not loud, just a whisper. You still don't belong. You still don't have family. You're still waiting by that window. Then one day, everything changed. It was Ethan's birthday. I had planned a surprise dinner at his favorite restaurant and ordered a deep emerald dress I knew he'd love. After work, we were supposed to stop by the boutique to pick it up. I remember the sunlight through the windshield, how Ethan held my hand at the red light, smiling. "You're humming," he teased. "Should I be worried?" I joked. "Only if the surprise involves karaoke." We laughed. Then headlights, a screech, metal twisting, glass shattering, Ethan's voice screaming my name, and pain, blinding, crushing pain. When I opened my eyes, everything was white. Machines beeped around me. But I couldn't feel my legs. I tried to move. Nothing. A nurse appeared, gently holding my arm. "Rachel, you've been in an accident. You're safe now." I croaked out the only question that mattered. "Where's Ethan?" "He's okay. Bruised. A concussion. But he's alive." She paused. "You had surgery. There was damage to your spine." And just like that, the life I built cracked. The dream I designed, brick by brick, color by color. I could feel it unraveling beneath me. And deep inside, a terrible voice whispered, "He'll leave. They always do." The first thing I felt was stillness. A terrifying, unnatural stillness that started at my hips and dropped down like a curtain. I blinked at the ceiling white, humming, too bright. The sterile scent of antiseptic stung my nose. Machines beeped rhythmically beside me, their cold assurance no comfort at all. I tried to move. Nothing. Not my toes, not my legs, not even a flicker. Terror gripped my throat before I could form words. Then a nurse appeared, blonde hair pulled tight, voice soft but clinical. "Rachel, you're in the hospital. You were in an accident. You had spinal surgery. You're safe now." I swallowed hard. My husband. "He's okay. Mild concussion. A few bruises. He's in recovery. He asked about you the whole time." I closed my eyes. Relief surged through me. Then guilt. Then dread. "Why can't I feel my leg?" She hesitated. "It's too soon to say what's permanent. There's swelling. It may go down." May? That word rattled around in my chest like a loose screw. Ethan came in later that day. His face was pale, bruised at the temple, and his hand trembled slightly as he reached for mine. "You scared the hell out of me," he said, voice cracking. I can't feel my legs, I whispered. He didn't flinch, just held my hand tighter.
They don't know yet, he said. You're strong. You'll come back from this.
But I saw it, the flicker in his eyes. That split-second drop before he forced the smile back on. The same flicker I'd seen in people when they realized I'd grown up in the system. That tiny shift from hope to calculation. Weeks blurred together. Nurses, physical therapists, pain meds that left me nauseous and foggy. I stared at the hospital ceiling for hours, wondering how my life could change so completely in one instant. I'd built everything so carefully, my career, my body, my control. All of it was crumbling. At night, I would hold the call button in one hand and the wedding ring in the other. I couldn't sleep. My thoughts looped like a broken record. What if Ethan stays out of guilt? What if he resents me? What if I become a burden? Worse than the pain was the humiliation of being helped, being lifted, bathed, changed. I'd spent my life proving I didn't need saving. And now, I couldn't even get to the bathroom by myself. When I was discharged, I returned home in a wheelchair. Ethan had made the place accessible, ramps, bars, everything. He'd even hired a nurse named Margaret to help during the day. But nothing felt like home anymore. I sat in the middle of our living room, staring at the walls I had chosen, the textures I had layered with intention. They were still beautiful. I felt like a ghost inside the life I had built. At first, Ethan was there, constantly cooking, cleaning, kissing my forehead, brushing my hair. But slowly, things began to change. He started working late, said the business needed him, that we couldn't afford to slow down. And he was right. Collins and Company couldn't run itself. But I noticed how he avoided eye contact when I cried, how he no longer crawled into bed beside me but slept on the couch to give me space. I didn't blame him. I blamed myself. One evening, I stared at an email on my laptop, an offer to guest lecture at a design conference in Austin, travel and lodging paid. I hovered over the reply button, then looked at my legs. I couldn't travel alone, couldn't even get into a cab without help. I deleted the email. Instead, I stared at the old photograph on my desk. 7-year-old me, small, framed by that orphanage window, waiting. She looked so familiar. The next day, I told Ethan to go in early, said I was feeling okay. Margaret was out for the morning. And then there was a knock at the door. I rolled myself over slowly, expecting a delivery. When I opened the door, a man stood there, late 50s, salt and pepper hair, nervous hands. But it was the eyes gray blue, sharp, strangely familiar. "Rachel Collins?" he asked. "Yes." He exhaled slowly. "My name is Dr. Thomas Green, and I'm your father." My breath caught. For a moment, I didn't understand the sentence. My father. No, I laughed. Bitter and automatic. That's impossible. He took a step back. I know how it sounds, but I didn't know about you. Your mother, she never told me. I found out only 2 months ago, before she passed. My heart stopped. She's dead. He nodded. Cancer. She contacted me before she went, said she had something to confess, said I had a daughter she left behind. I gripped the wheels of my chair until my knuckles went white. He kept going. She asked me to find you, to tell you she was sorry, that she regretted everything. I know that doesn't mean much now. My voice was sharp. Why are you really here? He hesitated. Because I am a spinal rehabilitation doctor. I've worked with patients like you for decades, and I think I can help you. For a full minute, I said nothing. This was absurd. Too neat, too good, too late. And yet, something in his eyes, guilt, gentleness, Something old and buried spoke to a part of me I didn't want to acknowledge. "Help me walk," I asked, almost mocking. He nodded. "Why would you even care?" "Because you're my daughter. And I already lost you once without knowing I had you. I can't undo the past, but I can be here now. If you'll let me." I didn't answer. He handed me a card. "I'll be in town for a while. Call me if you decide." And then he left. I stayed frozen for a long time. The card sat on my lap, weightless but heavy. For 30 years, I had no father. Now, he was here. Now he wanted to help. And for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel since the accident. Not trust, not even forgiveness. Hope. But hope is dangerous, especially when you start to feel it in secret. Because I didn't tell Ethan. I didn't tell him about Thomas, about the offer, about anything. And that silence, that would soon come back to haunt me in the worst way possible. I didn't call him right away. For 2 full days, Dr. Thomas Green's card sat untouched on my nightstand. I'd catch myself staring at it while pretending not to. I told myself I was just thinking, just weighing the risk. The truth was, I was terrified of wanting something again. I'd learned to keep my expectations small. Hope was a dangerous habit, especially when it came to people who were supposed to love you, because when they left, it didn't just hurt, it erased you. But that morning, after Margaret left and the apartment was quiet, I wheeled myself to the bedroom and picked up the card. I ran my fingers over the embossed lettering, the clean serif font. Dr. Thomas Green, Ph.D. Neuromuscular Rehabilitation Specialist, Seattle Spine and Recovery Institute. I dialed the number. Our first session wasn't in a hospital. It was at his rented condo, in a room he'd converted into a private therapy space. Nothing fancy, just soft mats, a few mobility tools, and a mirror that stretched from floor to ceiling. "You sure about this?" he asked, offering his hand to help me onto the mat. I nodded. "Just tell me what to do." His methods were different, slower, more specific than the hospital PTs. He focused on muscle stimulation, breathing control, visualization. "You have to reintroduce your brain to the idea of movement," he said, "even if nothing happens for weeks." And at first, nothing did. No movement, no twitch, just me lying on a mat, trying to flex legs that didn't know I was still here. But Thomas never looked disappointed, only patient. Every time I cursed or cried or nearly gave up, he'd say, "There's no clock on healing." He never pushed too far, but he also never let me back away. I didn't tell Ethan. At first, it was because I wasn't sure what to say. Then it was because I was scared he'd laugh. Or worse, not care. And then, it became a pattern and omission that grew heavier with each passing session. I justified it. He was too stressed with work. We were too fragile after the accident. I'd tell him when there was something real to say, when I had actual results. But deep down, I knew that wasn't why I kept silent. Deep down, I was afraid that if I let Ethan see this vulnerable part of me, the hope, the desperation, he'd start pulling away for good. Meanwhile, something strange was happening. I started feeling. Not movement, not yet, but sensation, tingling in my right thigh, a hot, cold response in my left calf. I didn't say anything to Thomas at first. I thought maybe I was imagining it. But when I finally admitted it, he smiled. "That's your nervous system rebooting," he said. "It's a good sign." Something loosened in my chest, like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't trapped in this chair forever. That evening, I waited up for Ethan. It was nearly midnight when I heard the front door open. His keys clattered too loud against the counter. "Hey," I said softly. He looked surprised to see me awake. "You should be sleeping." "I wanted to see you." He came over and kissed the top of my head, distant, automatic. How was work? I asked.
He shrugged. Same. Long day. We lost a client.
He didn't ask how I was. He hadn't in days. I wanted to tell him about the tingling, about the spark of progress, but the space between us felt cold. So I just nodded. I made your favorite soup. It's in the fridge. Thanks. He didn't touch it. The next morning, Thomas called to confirm our next session. I was smiling when I hung up. Then I looked up and froze. Ethan was standing in the hallway, holding my phone. His face was unreadable. You okay? I asked. He handed me the phone silently. Who's Thomas? My stomach dropped. He's a doctor, I said. A specialist. You've been meeting him without telling me. I opened my mouth, closed it. I didn't want to get your hopes up. Or mine. Ethan cut me off. That's not what this feels like. You've been hiding something. You've been smiling more. You have this new energy, and it's not from me. I stared at him, stunned. Are you seriously accusing me of something? I don't know, he said, backing away. Should I? I felt like the room was closing in. You think I'm cheating on you, with a man I just met, while I'm in a wheelchair. He didn't answer, which was worse than shouting. I wheeled myself toward the window, the sunlight glaring in like an interrogation light. You know what hurts, I said. Not that you asked, but it's the fact that after everything we've been through, the second I don't need you as much, you get suspicious. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. That's not fair. No, I snapped. What's not fair is you looking at me like I'm some stranger you regret marrying. He didn't deny it. That night, he slept on the couch again. I went to my next session with Thomas in a daze. I didn't mention the fight. He didn't ask. But when I pushed through a new exercise, lifting my left knee off the mat 2 inches, he clapped like I'd just run a marathon. You're coming back, he said. I'm scared, I whispered. He knelt beside me. That's okay. You get to be scared. You don't have to be strong all the time. No one had ever said that to me before. Not Ethan, not anyone. Just my father. That evening, I called Ethan. He didn't pick up. I left a voicemail. Hey, I just finished therapy. It's working. Ethan, I think I really might walk again. My voice cracked. I wanted him to be proud. But when he came home hours later, he looked furious.
And this time, he didn't hold back.
You lied to me. I didn't lie. You didn't tell me this man was in your life. You didn't tell me he was your father. I froze. He'd heard the voicemail, or maybe read a message. I tried to explain, but it was too late. The look on his face wasn't just hurt. It was betrayal. You've been telling him things you don't even tell me, he said. My chest burned, because he listens. Silence. Then Ethan said the words I never thought I'd hear. Maybe we made a mistake. The next morning, the house felt different. Not quiet, silent. Not calm, hollow. Ethan had already left. No note. No coffee mug in the sink. No kiss on the forehead like he used to give me before heading to the job site. Just air. Empty and heavy. I sat by the window. The sun slicing through the blinds. Outside. People walked dogs. Jogged. Lived. Inside. I was frozen. Wrapped in a quilt Margaret had left on the couch, still in the clothes from last night. Maybe we made a mistake. His words rang like a bell I couldn't unhear, not shouted in anger, not spat through gritted teeth, spoken softly, truthfully. And that somehow hurt worse. Later that afternoon, Thomas stopped by unannounced. I wasn't expecting him. He'd brought smoothies, smiled like he always did. Until he saw my face. You okay? I laughed sharp and broken. No, I'm not, he knows. About you. About everything. He lowered the drinks, voice quiet. Did he say something? I nodded. He thinks I'm having an affair. With you. Thomas recoiled. His jaw tightened not with offense, but shame. "This is my fault," he said. "I should have met him. Explained everything. I didn't want to complicate things." "Well," I muttered, wiping a tear with my wrist. "Too late." He stepped forward and gently squeezed my shoulder. "Rachel, this what you're going through, it's not a result of who you are. It's a result of people not knowing how to hold you." I didn't answer. Because in that moment, I didn't want kind words. I wanted Ethan. I wanted him to walk through that door and say he trusted me. The knock came 3 hours later. I thought it was Margaret, maybe dropping something off. But when I opened the door, it was Ethan. And the first thing he saw was me leaning against Thomas, who was helping me practice shifting weight from chair to walker. Rachel, Ethan's voice cracked like dry wood. Thomas straightened quickly. "This isn't—" Ethan didn't wait. He stormed across the room and shoved Thomas backward. "Get away from my wife!" "Stop," I screamed, rolling between them. "He's my father." The words cracked open the room like lightning. Ethan froze, mouth still twisted mid-accusation. "What?" "He's my biological father," I said again, louder now, chest heaving. "The one I never knew. The one my mother never told me about. He found me. And he's been helping me try to walk again." The silence that followed was unbearable. You could hear the refrigerator hum, the creak of the floorboards under Ethan's shifting weight. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "Oh my God," he whispered, stepping back like I'd hit him. "What have I done?" He sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. His shoulders shook, not with rage, but regret. I stayed by the window, my hands gripping the wheels of my chair so tight my knuckles turned white. Thomas looked at me, waiting. I gave him a small nod. He sat in the armchair across from Ethan and spoke first. "I didn't know about Rachel until recently. I swear it. I met her as a doctor first. Only after did I find out who she was to me." Ethan didn't look up. "You should have told me." "I know," I said. "I didn't know how." He raised his head. "You could tell him, but not me." "No," I said. "I told no one. I was scared. Not of you, of losing the only thing in my life that felt like it was mine." Tears blurred my vision. "This isn't just about walking. It's about proving I'm not broken, that I'm not a burden. And I didn't want you to see me trying and failing." Ethan turned to Thomas, his voice hoarse. "I thought she was slipping away. I thought she didn't trust me." Thomas leaned forward, firm but gentle. "You love her. That's obvious. But love isn't about control or suspicion. It's about showing up, especially when it's hardest." He looked at me. "I failed her once. I won't do it again." Then to Ethan, "Don't make the same mistake I did." The three of us sat in silence. Me, the woman trying to rebuild a body and a marriage. Thomas, the father trying to rebuild a bridge that had never even been built. And Ethan, the husband who now saw his wife not as deceitful, but as someone surviving. After a long time, Ethan stood and walked to me. He knelt in front of my chair and took my hands. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for not seeing you, for not asking, for assuming the worst." I nodded, unable to speak. My throat felt carved out of stone. "Can we fix this?" he asked. "Can I help now?" My voice was barely audible. "Only if you listen." "I will," he said. "I promise." From that day forward, things didn't magically repair, but they shifted. Ethan came with me to therapy, not just as an observer, but as part of the process. He learned the stretches, supported my balance, cheered for the tiniest victories. He even asked Thomas questions about the spine, about recovery timelines, about nerve damage. They talked, awkward at first, then naturally. And slowly, trust began to bloom where resentment had lived. One morning, After an especially tough session, Thomas asked me something I didn't expect. Rachel, do you think people can deserve a second family after failing the first? I looked up, breath caught. I think people can build what they never had, if they're willing to show up for it. He smiled. That's all I needed to know. And then he pulled out a small velvet box. I'm going to propose to Margaret. I blinked. Wait, what? She's been my anchor during all of this. And I think I want to give both of us a real shot at joy. The next few weeks flew by in a blur of progress. I was using the walker more, standing for longer, holding balance without help. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't fast, but it was forward. I placed the photo of my 7-year-old self on a new shelf in the hallway, not beside my hospital records or therapy charts, but beside a new picture. Me, Ethan, and Thomas, arms linked, smiling. It still didn't feel real, but it was. And then one email changed everything. A past client, one of our biggest, had just dropped us without warning. No explanation, no complaint, no second chance. Ethan called them 3 times. No answer. That night, he sat beside me at the kitchen table, white-knuckling his coffee cup. I don't get it, he muttered. They loved our work. Why now? Then his phone buzzed. He picked it up, and the color drained from his face. The screen on Ethan's phone lit up with a single name, Samantha Leeds. My heart skipped. Samantha had been one of our earliest and most profitable clients, a tech executive with impossible standards and a penthouse overlooking the Seattle skyline. She loved Ethan's clean structural lines and adored my warm, layered interiors. She was demanding, yes, but we had delivered. Ethan answered the call with forced calm. Samantha. A pause. Then, wait, what? He stood, pacing, shoulders tight. You're canceling everything? We've already broken ground. I heard her voice faintly sharp, clipped. Ethan turned his back to me. That's not true. Who told you that? My stomach twisted. He hung up and dropped into the chair beside me, rubbing his temples. She said we're unprofessional, that there's drama in our personal life, that we're a liability now. I blinked, but how would she even know? Then it hit me. The voicemails, the missed calls, the way Ethan's reaction had gone nuclear when he found out about Thomas. The client drop, it wasn't about our work. It was about our marriage. People talk. One of our subcontractors had probably overheard something. Maybe even Margaret had said something innocent that got twisted. In business, especially in luxury design, perception was everything. And now we were bleeding trust. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on the table. This isn't just about money. If Samantha drops, others will follow. What do we do? I asked, pulse rising. He looked at me, finally really looked at me, and in that moment, I saw something shift. Not panic, not blame. Strategy. We go public, he said. The next day, we recorded a short video, just the 2 of us, seated on our living room couch. No PR team, no filters. Ethan spoke first. We're Ethan and Rachel Collins, co-founders of Collins & Company. Some of you may have heard rumors about us, about our business, about our family. He glanced at me. I picked it up. We're not ashamed of our story. After a life-changing accident, I've been on a journey not just of healing, but of rediscovery. During that journey, I met my biological father for the first time. I paused. Ethan squeezed my hand. We've faced misunderstandings. We've had to rebuild trust, but we've come through stronger. And our commitment to each other, to our clients, to creating spaces that feel like home has never been clearer. We uploaded it to the company site, then to LinkedIn, then Instagram. It wasn't just a statement, it was a stake in the ground. we would not be erased by whispers. What we didn't expect was the response. Emails flooded in, not from skeptics, but from people like us. Clients who had been through illness, divorce, loss, designers with disabled spouses, architects raised in foster care, strangers who said things like, "Thank you for showing it's possible to break and still build again." One message stood out. "Your story made me cry. My wife's in a chair, too. Thank you for reminding me to see her again." We sat in silence, reading it. That night, I didn't use the walker to get to the couch. I asked Ethan to carry me. Not because I had to, because I wanted to be close. Business slowly stabilized. Some clients returned, others referred new ones. The phone rang. Appointments filled the calendar again. But behind the success was still the same quiet battle, my body, trying to remember itself. Each step with the walker was a war. Balance, breath, will. Thomas adjusted our routine, adding resistance bands, mirror feedback, core training. One morning, he guided me through a standing sequence, no walker, just his hand at my waist, and Ethan watching, nervously silent. "Ready?" Thomas asked. "No."
Do it anyway.
I bent my knees. My thighs shook. My breath came fast. But I stood. 5 seconds. Then 10. Then 15. The mirror in front of me showed a woman not whole, not healed, but alive. When I collapsed back into the chair, Ethan was crying.
You did it, he whispered.
And I realized so was I. The house began to feel like a home again, not because I could walk a few shaky steps, but because the space between us had softened. Ethan and Thomas, strange as it was, grew close. They talked about design, about architecture, about growing up without male mentors. Sometimes they stayed up late on the porch, sipping coffee, laughing about nothing. It felt normal. Margaret, too, had become more than a nurse. She was family, quiet, steady, always there when things cracked. And when Thomas announced he'd proposed, none of us were surprised. "I'm marrying her in the spring," he said over dinner. "Small ceremony, backyard, simple." I squeezed his hand. "I'll be there." He smiled. "I hope you'll do more than that." I raised a brow. "I hope you'll walk me down the aisle." I didn't answer right away. I was terrified to say yes. What if I failed? But that night, I stared at the photo in the hallway, me, 7 years old, pressed against the glass of that orphanage window. I wheeled up to it, reached out, and gently turned the frame face down. It was time. We began training, not for therapy, for the aisle. Thomas worked with me on terrain practice grass, gravel, uneven stone. Margaret sewed small weights into my shoes to build ankle control. And Ethan. He showed up every day. He never missed a session. He was my harness, my balance, my breath. He became part of the healing in a way that no medicine could provide. One afternoon, while helping me down the stairs slowly, Ethan asked, "Do you regret any of it?" I looked at him. "The accident." He shrugged. "All of it." I took a deep breath. "No, because it brought me here, to you, to him, to this."
And then, a week before the wedding, something happened.
I was practicing alone in the garden with the walker when Margaret ran out with a manila envelope in her hand. "It's from the clinic," she said. "Thomas's annual scan results." I opened it, thinking nothing of it, and froze. Right there, at the bottom of the report, bolded "suspicious mass detected, further imaging required." I stared at the envelope in my lap, the sun beating down on the garden like it didn't know anything had just changed. The words on the medical report blurred and refocused again. "Suspicious mass detected, further imaging recommended." My mouth went dry. My throat tightened. Margaret, standing nearby with her hands gripping the back of my chair, looked as if someone had pulled the floor out from beneath her.
I thought this was just routine, I whispered.
It was, she said softly, but you know how these things go. They check, and sometimes they find more than they're looking for.
Thomas had told us he was getting a scan the week before. Nothing urgent, just a regular check-in for an old sports injury. Nothing to worry about. Until now.
I heard the garden gate creak behind me. Ethan walked toward us, smiling, wiping sweat from his brow after repairing a trellis post.
Did I miss something?
I folded the letter quickly, but not fast enough. He caught the look in my eyes and stopped.
What's going on?
Margaret stepped forward. It's Thomas. His scan came back. They found something.
Ethan's face dropped. Is he here?
He's inside, I said. He doesn't know yet. Ethan didn't wait. He turned and walked straight to the house, his shoulders suddenly rigid. I sat there, unable to follow, gripping the walker beside me so tightly my knuckles went white.
By the time I wheeled inside, the air felt heavier.
Thomas was standing in the kitchen, the opened envelope in his hand now. His eyes were calm, too calm. I was going to tell you after the wedding, he said, looking between us. Ethan leaned on the counter, arms crossed. Tell us what? Thomas folded the letter and set it down. That this probably isn't anything. But even if it is, I've seen worse. Margaret stepped in. You can't just brush this off. You of all people know how fast these things can turn. He gave her a tired smile, which is exactly why I want to enjoy the time we have instead of running lab to lab, chasing maybes. I swallowed, but if there's a chance. He shook his head gently. Rachel, I've worked in hospitals my whole life. Sometimes the data doesn't lie. I'm not afraid of what this might be. I'm afraid of missing what I already have. A silence fell, and it wasn't heavy. It was reverent. The kind of quiet people keep when someone tells the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my body aching from the day's therapy. But this time it wasn't my body that kept me up. It was fear.
Not of walking, not of failing.
Of losing him again? I'd just found him, just started calling him Dad in my mind, even if the word never made it to my lips. I got up, slid into my wheelchair, and rolled down the hallway. Thomas was still awake, reading in the dim light of the guest room. You always were restless, he said when I appeared at the door. I nodded. You really think you're fine? He looked up. No, I think I might be sick, but I also think this life, this moment, is worth more than a diagnosis. I hesitated. Then let me give you something. Something that means something. He set the book down. What do you mean? I want to walk you down the aisle. His face crumpled, and for a moment he said nothing. Then he stood, crossed the room, and knelt in front of me. I already thought I had everything I needed, he whispered, but that would be everything. The day of the wedding came with sunlight that felt impossibly generous. The backyard had been transformed, folding white chairs, strings of lights weaving through the oak branches, a soft jazz trio playing under a canopy. Margaret wore a pale lavender dress and carried a bouquet of soft peonies and sage. Her eyes welled with tears before the ceremony even began. Thomas wore a charcoal gray suit with a lavender tie to match, but it was the nervous crease in his brow that caught me. As guests settled, I waited behind the house, hands trembling against the padded handles of my walker. Ethan stood beside me, dressed sharp, confident, but I could see the emotions simmering beneath. You've got this, he said softly. I nodded, adjusting the bracelet I'd worn since my engagement. It had the ring Ethan had given me still looped through, resting against my wrist like a promise. The music shifted. I took a breath, then another. Then I stepped forward. The grass was soft and uneven, But I had trained for this. Every small muscle in my legs shook with effort. My arms burned with each movement forward. And yet, I walked. Step by step. Thomas turned as I appeared at the edge of the aisle, and his face crumbled. He reached up, wiped his eyes, then met me halfway. We walked the rest of the aisle together. Guests gasped softly, then clapped. Some stood. Margaret wept. And when we reached the altar, Thomas kissed my forehead and whispered, "You've already given me a second chance. Now I believe in third ones, too." The ceremony was simple and beautiful. No speeches, no formalities, just love, witnessed. Afterward, we danced under the canopy lights, me in my chair. Ethan crouched beside me, spinning my hand like we were in a ballroom. People laughed, plates clinked, stories were shared.
It was more than a wedding.
It was redemption. Later that night, after guests had gone and the garden was quiet, I found myself alone at the window, staring out into the dark. Then Thomas came beside me, holding a photo frame. It was my old childhood picture, the one I'd kept on my desk all those years. But it was reframed. Beside it, in the same photo mat, was a picture of me walking down the aisle.
"I thought they belonged together," he said.
I reached out, touched the glass. My younger self still looked afraid. But beside her stood a version of me I never thought I'd become. Strong, present, chosen.
"Thank you," I whispered.
He smiled. "Don't thank me. You did this." And then, just as I was about to go to bed, Margaret called from the porch.
"Rachel, there's a package here for you. No return address."
Ethan and I exchanged a look. I wheeled outside. Inside the box was a letter. Typed. And unsigned. "You may have everyone else fooled, but some people never forget who you really are. You were abandoned for a reason, and some things can't be fixed no matter how hard you try." Attached was a photo of me
At 7 years old,
sitting at the orphanage window. The letter weighed heavy in my hands, the photo tucked inside like a shard of my past I'd tried to forget. I stared at the 7-year-old girl pressed against the orphanage window, waiting, hopeful, abandoned. The words stabbed deeper than I expected. You were abandoned for a reason. Some things can't be fixed no matter how hard you try. I wanted to scream, to throw the letter into the fire and erase those cruel voices. But instead, I folded it slowly, carefully, like it was a fragile truth I had to face. Because I knew deep down I was more than the sum of my scars. Ethan came home late that night. His eyes caught mine immediately, the weight of everything hanging between us. "I got a message," he said quietly. "Someone's trying to shake us." I nodded. "The letter. It's from someone who knows." He swallowed hard, then took my hand. "We'll face them, together." Days turned into weeks, and the threat lingered like a shadow. I threw myself into work designing spaces that felt like refuge, warmth, and light. Spaces where people could heal just by walking through the door. Every room I created was a reminder I was no longer the girl waiting by a window. I was the woman building homes, building a life, building a family. But the hardest part wasn't the threats or the doubts. It was learning to forgive. Forgive my mother for leaving me.
Forgive Ethan for doubting me.
Forgive myself for ever believing I wasn't enough. One afternoon, Thomas and I sat on the porch, the late spring sun warming our faces. "I think you're ready," he said. "For what?" "To walk down your own path." I looked at him, the man who'd come back into my life like a second chance. I smiled. "Then I'll walk." That evening, I stood at the edge of the garden where Ethan waited. My legs trembled as I took the first shaky step without the walker. The grass was soft beneath my feet. The air smelled like jasmine and fresh earth. Ethan's eyes filled with tears as I moved forward. Each step was deliberate, slow, but mine. The photo of the girl at the orphanage window flashed in my mind. She was finally free. We built more than a business that year. We built a family. Thomas married Margaret in a small ceremony filled with laughter and tears. Ethan and I renewed our vows on the anniversary of our wedding day, this time with no secrets, no shadows. I kept the old photo of the girl at the window framed beside my new picture me, standing tall, arms linked with Ethan. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. The ghosts of my past still visit in quiet moments. The fear of losing what I've built still lurks. But now, when those shadows come, I face them head on. Because I know this. Being abandoned once doesn't mean you're abandoned forever. Being broken doesn't mean you can't be whole again. And if you're watching this feeling lost, unseen, or betrayed, know that your story isn't over. You can stand. You can build. You can choose who you want to be. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, please like and share. Comment below what's your story of hope and healing. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that remind us we're never alone. Because sometimes the hardest thing to forgive is the past. But forgiveness doesn't change the past. It changes the future. Story 2. My name is Maya Rutherford. I'm 32 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I knew exactly who my family was. I was wrong. That night, I slid a manila folder across the polished mahogany dinner table. It made no sound, but the silence that followed was deafening. My sister Natalie's face drained of all color. Her fork froze in midair. She looked at the folder like it might explode. "Maya, what is this?" Her voice was barely a whisper, but we both knew. She was staring at the document that would unravel her life. Inside that folder was everything. Her forged signature, my social security number, the proof that she'd stolen my identity and used it to buy a $730,000 house in my name. And what made it worse? I'd known for months. I had waited for this moment. I had planned it. But to understand how I got here, you need to know how it all started. It wasn't a bang. It was a phone call. It was a Tuesday morning. I was running late to my job at a downtown accounting firm in Denver, hair still damp, laptop bouncing in my oversized tote. I remember the exact second the phone rang. Unknown number. For once, I picked up. "Ms. Maya Rutherford. This is Jennifer Walsh from First National Bank. We need to speak with you about your mortgage. You're 3 months behind on your payment." I stopped mid-step. The crowd on the sidewalk flowed around me like I didn't exist. Someone bumped into my shoulder. I didn't even blink.
I'm sorry. What mortgage?
The $730,000 loan taken out 8 months ago. If we don't receive a payment soon, we'll need to initiate foreclosure.
The world tilted sideways. I leaned against a brick wall, barely holding on to my phone.
I didn't have a mortgage. I lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment where the heater rattled and the bathroom door stuck. I didn't own property. Hell, I couldn't even get approved for a new car loan after my student debt. But something about that timeline, 8 months ago, that's when Natalie had suddenly announced she'd bought her dream home, a charming colonial with a wraparound porch in the suburbs. She said she'd saved for years. She said she got a great deal through a teacher program. I wanted to believe her. I asked Jennifer to send me the documents. 20 minutes later, sitting in my car in the parking garage, I opened the email. My vision blurred. My name, my social security number, my job title, my annual salary, my signature. Except I had never seen those papers before, never signed a single one. Then I saw the address listed on the mortgage application. 847 Maple Street, Natalie's house. I called in sick. I didn't think. I just drove. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. My throat felt tight, like I couldn't swallow air. The image of that forged signature pulsed in my brain like a bruise.
Natalie opened the door in yoga pants and a messy bun. Her house smelled like cinnamon candles and privilege.
Maya, shouldn't you be at work?
We need to talk. I pushed past her into the living room.
The living room I had helped her decorate last Thanksgiving. The one with the throw pillows from West Elm and the thrifted coffee table she claimed was a miracle find.
The room I'd apparently paid for, without knowing. I turned to face her.
I got a call from First National Bank today.
A flicker in her eyes. Not guilt, not fear. Annoyance. She waved her hand like she was swatting a fly. Oh, that I can explain. Explain how you took out a mortgage in my name. It's not what you think. You forged my signature. You stole my identity. Natalie, this is fraud. This is criminal. You could go to prison. She blinked at me, then laughed. Laughed? Maya, don't be so dramatic. It's just paperwork. I'm obviously going to make the payments.
You're 3 months behind. That's temporary. Quincy lost his job again. But he's looking...
Quincy, her unemployed, full-time, boyfriend part-time, dreamer. This isn't a missed Venmo split. This is identity theft. My credit is ruined. If you default, they come after me. Then help me make the payments. You always said we should have each other's backs. I stared at her. I wasn't looking at my little sister anymore. I was looking at a stranger wearing her skin. I did something stupid that night. I went to my parents' house. It smelled like pot roast and old photos, and let's not talk about it. Natalie was already there, fake crying into a tissue on the couch. Mom said gently,
Maya, sweetie, Natalie told us what happened. This is a difficult situation.
Hope sparked just for a second.
Then Dad added,
But she's family. Family works it out. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat. I listened. I watched Natalie twist the story, make herself look like a helpless girl who just borrowed a little identity because her big sister had great credit. And my parents bought it. Even when I said the words felony and fraud, Dad just shook his head. That's harsh. Maya, she made a mistake. A mistake doesn't require a forged signature and 2 months of planning. Girls, don't fight, Mom said. Natalie, you should have asked Maya. Asked me. You don't ask someone if you can commit a federal crime. That's enough, Dad said, his voice low. You're being cruel. I looked around the room at the people I had loved my whole life.
And I realized something.
I was alone.
Not just disappointed.
Utterly alone. I got in my car and drove. Nowhere. Just drove. I ended up in a Walmart parking lot at midnight, crying behind the wheel, whispering into the steering wheel. They'll never choose me. Not over her. That night, something broke inside me, but something else formed.
Resolve.
I wiped my face with the sleeve of my hoodie, sat up straight. If my family wouldn't protect me, then I would protect myself. And I would start with one thing Natalie had never expected from me. Evidence. The next morning, I called in sick again. But this time, I wasn't curled up in bed or crying in my car. This time, I opened a fresh legal pad, wrote Step 1 at the top, and started a list. I wasn't going to scream anymore. I wasn't going to plead with people who didn't want to see the truth. I wasn't going to be the softy Natalie thought I was. No. I was going to build a case. And it started with paper. I dug through old emails, pulled up my credit reports, requested copies of everything from the bank, every document Natalie had forged, every statement that came to her address with my name on it. I wanted it all. I even went through our old family group texts, just in case there was some throwaway line that could help me prove intent. I learned to read her social media posts like a crime scene analyst. Meanwhile, my apartment stayed cold because I couldn't get approved for a new utility deposit. My landlord sent a notice about late rent. My credit absolutely trashed. A week later, I walked into First National Bank's branch downtown and asked to speak to the loan officer listed on the mortgage. Her name was Janet. She was in her 50s, polite, efficient, the kind of woman who probably sent thank you cards for everything. I introduced myself. Her brow furrowed.
Miss Rutherford, but weren't you just in here last month?
I shook my head slowly. No, that was my sister.
She looked genuinely confused. Then I told her everything.
I showed her the email, the paperwork. She pulled up the loan file on her screen. But this is your signature.
I never signed that.
Janet squinted at the page. Her expression changed. The pen pressure is inconsistent, and the alignment's off. She's been copying my signature since we were 12. I said, we used to forge each other's names on school notes. Her eyes met mine. I could see the wheels turning.
Miss Rutherford, this is identity theft. You need to report this to the police. This isn't a family misunderstanding. It's a felony.
My fingers clenched around the arm of the chair. I'm not ready yet. Not until I understand exactly how deep this goes. She nodded slowly. Then I suggest you gather everything. Make it airtight, because once this goes to the authorities, it's not coming back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, feeling like I was trapped in a glass room where everyone could see me but no one could hear me. How do you prove someone's betrayal when they share your DNA? How do you fight for justice in a family that believes peace is more important than truth?
I wasn't just fighting Natalie.
I was fighting an entire system of expectation that older sisters should be the bigger person, that successful women should help out struggling ones, that family means forgiveness, no matter the cost. No one talks about what it means to be the responsible one in the family. They just expect you to have perfect credit, a stable job, and a bottomless well of patience. But even wells run dry. 2 weeks later, I found something that made my blood run cold. I was scrolling through Natalie's Instagram, deep in the archives looking for any post that could prove she had planned this in advance. And there it was. A screenshot of my credit report, clear as day. My score, my social security number, my bank accounts. Posted in her stories from a year ago. A year. But that wasn't the worst part. In the comments, her boyfriend Quincy had replied, "Your sister's credit is way better than yours. Think she'll co-sign for a house." And Natalie, "She doesn't need to know she's co-signing." 3 heart eye emojis. I took a screenshot. My hands were shaking. She hadn't made a mistake. She had plotted. And then she had celebrated.
I went nuclear.
I hired a forensic handwriting expert, a woman named Robin, a PhD with horn-rimmed glasses and a zero-tolerance attitude. She analyzed the mortgage documents and confirmed it. This was not a natural signature. This was copied, and poorly. She pointed out the differences in stroke weight, the missing micropressure points. This is absolutely forged. I got phone records proving Natalie had called the bank multiple times, impersonating me.
I even discovered she'd rerouted certain pieces of my mail using USPS's change of address feature, something most people don't even know is possible, unless they're actively trying to intercept documents.
She wasn't dumb. She was careful, but not careful enough. Then came the hardest part. Getting someone from inside our family to help. Enter Jessica. Jessica's my cousin. We're the same age. Grew up like sisters. She's always been closer to Natalie than me. When I told her what happened, she was horrified. She did what? Stole my identity. Bought a house. Lied about it for almost a year. Jessica went silent. Then, let me talk to her. I hesitated. Then a dangerous idea hit me. Jess, if you do talk to her, would you be willing to record it?
Wait, what? It's legal. Colorado's a one-party consent state. You'd be recording your own conversation.
Jessica paused. Are you trying to trap her?
No, I'm trying to get the truth.
She agreed. They met at a coffee shop downtown. I coached Jess on what to say, what buttons to push, I knew Natalie better than anyone what made her proud, what made her careless.
Natalie had always wanted to be seen as clever, always wanted credit for her schemes.
And she delivered.
On that recording, she laughed.
Ma would never have helped me buy a house. She's so uptight with money. But wasn't it risky? Using her info, Jessica asked. Please. I've been signing her name forever. I know everything, her SSN, her job stuff, all of it. The bank didn't even blink. What if she finds out?
She won't. And if she does, what's she gonna do? Call the cops on her own sister.
A pause. Then, it's only a crime if you get caught. And the final nail.
Maya's too much of a softie to do anything anyway.
I listened to that recording 5 times that night. And each time, the same line echoed in my head. Too much of a softie. She thought I would roll over. She thought I'd carry the burden in silence. She thought I'd choose peace over justice. She was wrong. Because now I had everything.
And next,
She would know just how not soft I had become. I had all the pieces now. The fake signature, the bank recordings, the intercepted mail, the social media proof, and that golden recording from Jessica Natalie, laughing about how easy it was to become me.
All of it was in a single folder. I labeled it with a Post-it note that simply read, Truth. That folder sat on my desk like a loaded weapon.
And I still hadn't pulled the trigger. Not because I doubted her guilt, but because I wasn't ready to lose what little was left of my family. Because once I handed this over to the police, it was war. No more family dinners. No more pretending this could be patched up. But then I looked around my freezing apartment, the notice of credit denial on my kitchen counter, the unopened bills piling up. Natalie didn't hesitate to ruin me. Why was I still hesitating to hold her accountable? So I picked up my phone and called the Denver Police Department. I'd like to file a report for identity theft against my sister. Detective Sarah Roy met me at the station 2 days later. She was in her early 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense tone that made me feel, for the first time, like someone was actually on my side. She flipped through the folder in silence for a full 10 minutes, then looked up. This isn't just identity theft. This is long-term, premeditated fraud. She tapped the signature analysis. You had a handwriting expert confirm this. Yes. And this recording, that's your cousin's voice. Yes, Colorado's a one-party consent state. It's legal. Detective Roy closed the folder.
This case is airtight. If we move forward, your sister will likely be arrested and formally charged. That comes with a criminal record. Prison time.
My hands were in my lap. I could see the tips of my fingers trembling. Can I ask one thing? Can you wait to arrest her?
Why?
Because I want to confront her. One last time. Just me, my parents, and the truth. Detective Roy studied me. We can delay action for a few days, but once the report is in the system, it moves. That's all I ask. I called Natalie that Thursday. Kept my voice neutral.
Hey, want to have dinner Sunday, just us. Family only.
Seriously, she sounded surprised. Then pleased. I've been hoping you'd call. Mom and Dad's place. Like old times. Sounds perfect. Should I bring anything? No, just bring yourself. And maybe a conscience. That Saturday, I went to the gun range. Not because I wanted to hurt anyone, but because I needed to feel powerful again. Each shot into that paper target was a reminder I wasn't helpless. I wasn't trapped. Then I went home and laid out everything. 2 identical manila folders, one for me, one for her. Each one contained the police report, the signature analysis, screenshots from Instagram, the bank call records, Jessica's audio file, transcribed and time-stamped, and one small black voice recorder just in case someone tried to twist my words again. I didn't sleep much that night. I paced my apartment, rehearsed what I'd say. I stared at the pen on my kitchen counter, the same model Natalie had used to forge my name. I picked it up,
Twisted it between my fingers.
then put it in my purse. I was reclaiming everything, even the weapon she used against me. Sunday dinner looked normal on the surface. Mom made pot roast. The kitchen smelled like rosemary and garlic. Dad poured wine. Natalie chatted about her job like nothing had happened. My principal says I'm next in line for a department chair position. I nodded, smiling politely.
Wow, that's impressive.
My stomach was a coiled spring. We sat down to eat. The silverware clinked. Glasses clinked. Natalie's laughter filled the room.
It felt like a trap, and I was the bait.
Mom asked. Maya, you're quiet.
Just thinking, I said softly.
Natalie tilted her head. About what? I met her eyes. About family. About what it means. Dad nodded. No matter what happens, we stick together. Even when family members hurt each other. Yes, he said, without hesitation. I pulled the recorder from my purse and placed it gently on the table. Then let's talk honestly.
Natalie's smile twitched.
What's that?
Would you like to hear what you said last week? Natalie.
I hit play. Her voice, clear and proud. Ma would never have helped me buy a house. She's so uptight with money. But wasn't it risky? Jessica asked.
Please, I've been signing her name since we were kids. I know all her info by heart.
What if she finds out?
She won't. And even if she does, what's she gonna do? Call the cops on her own sister? Mom gasped. Dad stared. Natalie froze. But the last line hit like a bullet. It's only a crime if you get caught. And Ma's too much of a softie to follow through. Silence. Dead silence.
Then Natalie's voice, small.
Maya, where did you get that?
Does it matter?
She reached out. I pulled back. You were laughing about what you did to me. About how easy it was. Her face went pale. Dad cleared his throat. Natalie, is this true? She looked down, whispered. I was desperate. That's not desperation, I said. That's strategy. I slid the manila folder across the table. She opened it slowly. Her hands were shaking. First the expert testimony, then the screenshots, then the police report. She dropped the papers like they were burning. You filed a report against me. Yes. I'm your sister. Then you should have protected me, not destroyed me. Her lip trembled. Please don't do this. I'm not doing this. You did. And that's when my dad, my unshakable, always logical father, said something I'll never forget. Natalie, you need to fix this. The police report lay flat on the dinner table, staring up at us like a loaded gun no one wanted to touch.
Natalie's face had gone bone white. Her hands trembled as she tried to shove the folder shut. But the damage was done. The words were out. The evidence laid bare. Mom clutched her chest like she couldn't catch her breath. Dad leaned back in his chair, silent, his eyes not moving from the space between the salt shaker and the recording device. And me. I was steady. For the first time in months, I was steady. Natalie whispered. I'll fix it. I'll transfer the house to your name. I'll move out. I'll make the payments. Just don't send this to the police. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I reached into my purse and pulled out the pen. That pen, same brand, same ink, same model as the one used on the mortgage documents. I set it beside the folder. You used this to fake my name. Now I'll use it to sign my future back into my own hands. Her eyes filled with tears. You don't have to do this. But I do. Because you already did. Mom finally spoke. Maybe we can all take a breath. Think this through, as a family. I turned to her. I did think it through. Mom, for weeks. While my rent was overdue, while my credit got shredded, while I was being told to just help her.
She's your sister.
Then she should have protected me, not destroyed me.
I could feel something shift in the room. Not just guilt, but accountability. And that was new.
Natalie's voice cracked.
Please, don't do this. I don't have the money. I can't fix this. You should have thought about that before you stole my life. Dad finally spoke, quietly. So what happens now? I looked him in the eye. Now the report is filed. The detective will follow up. If Natalie cooperates, maybe she gets leniency. But this isn't just a family problem anymore. I left the house without another word. Outside, the autumn air bit at my skin. But for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel suffocating. It felt clean. I drove home in silence. No music, no crying. Just stillness. The next morning, Detective Roy called. We've begun the formal process. Expect contact soon. I nodded. Do what you need to do. 4 days later, Natalie was arrested. Not at home. At school. In front of her students. In front of her coworkers. In front of the life she built using my name. I didn't know they were going to do it that way. I never asked for that. But I won't lie, when I felt something twist in my chest. Not satisfaction. Finality. Quincy, her boyfriend gone, vanished the next day. No goodbye, no explanation. So much for standing by her. My parents were furious. Not at her, at me. Mom called in tears. She could go to prison. Maya. Then she should have thought of that before she forged federal documents. But she's your family. Family doesn't make you homeless. Click. Dad didn't call. A week passed. Then 2. Then court. Natalie's attorney tried everything. Blame the bank. Blame Quincy. Blame childhood trauma. Even blame me. Said I was vindictive, unforgiving, cold. But the jury didn't buy it. They looked at the evidence. They listened to the audio. They saw the timeline of lies. And in under 2 hours, they delivered the verdict. Guilty, on all counts.
Natalie got 2 years in prison, 5 years of probation, and an order to pay full restitution.
The house was sold to cover the loan, but it wasn't enough. She would be paying me back for years. I moved on. I rebuilt my credit slowly. I found a therapist and started healing the part of me that felt guilty for demanding justice. And eventually, I bought my own home, one that belonged only to me. I signed the mortgage papers with that same pen Natalie used to betray me. But this time, it wasn't a weapon. It was a symbol of ownership, of resilience, of never letting anyone else define my worth again. For a while, I thought that was the end. Until 6 months later, when the phone rang again. First National Bank, same voice, same tone. Ms. Rutherford, we've found something new, something you need to see. The voice on the other end of the call was calm, almost apologetic. Ms. Rutherford, we discovered some irregularities in your sister's loan file while closing out the case. We'd like to meet in person. Her name was Janet, the same loan officer who had looked me in the eye months ago and told me this was a crime, not a family misunderstanding. I met her at the First National Bank branch downtown, just past 10 Husroway. My lawyer, Lisa Park, came with me. She was all structured blazer, straight hair, and a sharp voice that made men twice her size back down. Janet greeted us with tight eyes and a stack of manila folders. Thank you both for coming. I'll get straight to it. She laid the folders on the table and opened the top one, revealing a web of email printouts, login records, internal memos. While auditing Ms. Natalie Rutherford's loan, we discovered evidence of internal fraud. Lisa tilted her head slightly. Are you saying this was an inside job? Janet nodded, her mouth a thin line. One of our senior loan officers, Stanley Wyatt, altered verification protocols, falsified documentation, and approved the loan manually, bypassing red flags. He also accessed your file repeatedly without cause. I stared at the folder.
He helped Natalie.
He coached her, Janet said. He told her what to say, what forms to forge, which security layers to skip. This wasn't just a one-off mistake. Lisa leaned forward, her tone sharpening.
How long has he been doing this?
We believe it started at least 3 years ago. He's connected to at least 6 other fraudulent mortgages, millions in bank losses. I swallowed hard. Where is he now? Arrested. 3 days ago. I sat back in the chair, letting the weight of that land. So Natalie didn't do it alone. It didn't erase her choices, but it changed something. She hadn't just taken advantage of me, she had been used too. Not that it justified her betrayal, but it explained the confidence, the sloppiness, the arrogance. She thought the system was on her side.
Because it was...
Until now. Janet cleared her throat, suddenly looking uncomfortable. There's one more thing. She slid another document across the table, this one thinner, with a bold heading in all caps. Settlement offer, civil damages, Ms. Maya Rutherford. Lisa's eyes narrowed as she skimmed the page. Then her eyebrows raised. Well, that's generous. We take our internal failures seriously, Janet said. And you, Ms. Rutherford, were deeply affected by both criminal fraud and institutional negligence. My heart began racing. What kind of settlement? Lisa turned the page toward me, tapping the final number. My jaw dropped. It was more money than I had ever made in a decade of accounting. They want to make this go away, Lisa murmured. Public trust, media optics. But this could set you up for life. I walked out of that bank like I was floating. The wind outside hit my face, but it didn't sting. I wasn't just reclaiming my life, I was building something entirely new. 2 days later, I got a call from the last person I expected. Blocked number. I almost didn't pick up. But something told me to answer. Maya. Oh God. You picked up.
It was Natalie.
Her voice was thinner, smaller, hollow in a way I hadn't heard before. How did you get this number?
A friend of mine from work. Someone who still talks to me.
I didn't respond. I heard about Stanley Wyatt, about what really happened. I stayed quiet. I know it doesn't change what I did, but he made it sound so easy, like it wasn't a big deal, like people do this all the time. I finally spoke. Did he convince you? Or did he amplify something that was already in you? Silence. Then, the idea was mine, but he made it feel normal. Like it wasn't stealing, just bending rules that were already unfair. I closed my eyes. She continued. He said if I kept up with payments, no one would ever find out. He said banks don't care as long as the money flows. And I believed him. She was crying now, real crying. I could hear her breath stutter through the receiver.
I'm sorry, Maya. I know that probably means nothing, but I am.
My voice didn't crack. Are you sorry I found out? Or sorry you did it? Both. All of it. I lost my sister, the only person who ever showed up for me, and I threw you under the bus for a house I don't even live in anymore. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the folder on the counter, the same folder that once held every shred of evidence. Now, it held only one sheet, my settlement confirmation. And the pen? The same one. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, she whispered. And maybe you shouldn't. But I needed you to know. I understand now. Why you did it. Why you had to. I looked out the window at the streetlight flickering in front of my new home. My home. Signed in my own hand. Paid with my own name. Earned with my own scars. I don't forgive you. Not yet. A pause.
but I hear you.
We hung up in silence. No promises. No reunion. Just something raw and real. And unfinished, Natalie served 18 months out of a 2-year sentence. She was released early, partly because of good behavior, partly because of the Stanley Wyatt revelations. The prosecution had acknowledged she was manipulated but never excused her actions. And neither did I. When I found out her release date, I didn't go to meet her. No hugs, no flowers, no welcome home. But I did something else. I called Lisa, my lawyer, and asked her to set up a wire transfer. Quiet, discreet. Enough money to enroll Natalie in a re-entry program plus 6 months of therapy. Real therapy, not some workbook worksheet in a prison rec room. The money came from the settlement, not from guilt. From principle. Because fixing what she broke was her job, but giving her the tools, that was mine. Not for her, for me. So I could finally let go. We didn't speak for a month. Then, one Saturday morning, I got a text. Maya, I'm enrolled. I started last week. I didn't expect anything from you. But thank you. I'm trying. I stared at the message. Then set my phone down. No response. Not yet. Let her keep trying. I began to rebuild my own life, brick by brick. I moved into a new house. Not a huge one, but it was mine, my name, my credit, my signature written with the same pen Natalie had once used to impersonate me. That pen now lived in a shadow box frame on my desk. Below it, in calligraphy, I signed for myself now. Symbolism mattered. Meanwhile, Natalie got a job at a community center, helping adults earn their GEDs. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real work, honest work. And slowly, cautiously, we began to talk again. Once a month, always in public, always with a time limit. Coffee, not dinner. Trust, not assumed, earned. The first few meetups were awkward. She'd ask about work. I'd give short answers. I'd ask how her therapy was going. She'd say, hard. But I'm doing it. She never asked to come over. And I never offered. That boundary was non-negotiable. One day, she brought up our parents. They've been trying to talk to me. I think Mom wants to believe this was all Wyatt's fault. I sighed into my cup. That's because believing the full truth would mean accepting what she didn't protect me from. Natalie nodded, silent. She didn't argue. She didn't deflect. She agreed. That mattered. Weeks passed. I started to breathe easier. I no longer flinched every time a bill came in the mail. I qualified for a new credit card. I paid off a chunk of student debt. Every line item was a tiny victory. Every approved email was a kind of apology the system never gave, but I took anyway. Then one evening, out of nowhere, Dad called. I almost didn't answer. But something told me to. His voice was quiet, slower than I remembered. Maya, I wanted to say something. I waited. I was wrong. I was so busy trying to hold the family together. I didn't realize I was asking you to fall apart. My throat tightened. You raised us to believe family sticks together, but it can't stick if it breaks you first. I know, he said, and I'm sorry for not choosing justice when it counted. There was a pause. I see you now, not just as my daughter, but as a woman who did the right thing when no one else would. I closed my eyes. Thank you. Mom took longer. She came around eventually, quietly, through action, not apology. She invited me for dinner one night, not with Natalie, just us. The food was the same. But the conversation, different. She asked questions. She listened. She said, "You didn't destroy this family. You protected it from being built on lies." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Then, a few weeks ago, Natalie did something that caught me completely off guard. She handed me an envelope across the coffee shop table. Not dramatic, no buildup. You don't have to open it now, she said, but I wanted you to have it. I waited until I got home. Inside was a letter, in her own handwriting. No excuses, no bargaining. Just her truth. And at the bottom,
A check. For the restitution payment, the first one.
she didn't know I didn't need it anymore. But that wasn't the point. She sent it anyway, and I deposited it. Not because I needed the money, but because she needed to pay it. I keep the rest of the letters she sent in a small drawer, right next to the police report, not out of spite, but as balance. 2 stacks. One that broke me. One that tried to rebuild something honest. And in between them, me, not a victim, not a villain, just a woman who refused to set herself on fire to keep someone else warm. Even when it was her sister, I still keep that black pen in a little shadow box on my desk, right above the framed police report. Every time I look at them, I feel a surge of something I never imagined possible: peace. It wasn't a quick fix. It wasn't a single moment. It was a long, winding path of confrontation, evidence, courtroom battles, therapy, and finally boundaries.
When Natalie got out of prison 18 months early, after Stanley Wyatt's inside job came to light, I didn't rush to welcome her home. Instead, I wired her money for a re-entry program and therapy so she could rebuild her sense of self. Not because I felt guilty, but because even justice needs tools to heal. Walking through the front door of my new house that first night was surreal. The floors creaked less than my old apartment, and the walls didn't rattle in the winter wind. I set the key on the entry table and let it rest there for a moment, just me, alone, in a place that was truly mine. That night, I unpacked the things that mattered. The framed pen, the same model she used to forge my signature. The police report, detailed and undeniable. A stack of letters she'd sent me: apologies, progress notes from therapy, the first restitution check. I arranged them carefully. They felt like chapters of a life I had reclaimed. Each symbol spoke louder than any apology: ownership, accountability, and the reminder that some lines, once crossed, must stay drawn. Over the following months, Natalie and I began to rebuild a relationship on entirely new terms. Coffee once a month, always in public settings, always with a clear end time. No more family dinners. No more, let's just forgive and forget. Instead, she would show me proof of her continuing therapy. I would listen, sometimes sympathetically, sometimes with tough questions. I would never let her breach my boundaries again. The first few meetups felt like interviews. She would ask about my new job, my house, how I was coping with life after the storm. I would ask about her work at the community center, the GED students she taught, how it felt to help others regain their dreams. Those moments, small and ordinary, felt monumental after everything we'd been through. My parents, too, found their own path back to me. Dad called one evening, voice trembling. "Maya, I see now that protecting the idea of family nearly crushed you. I'm sorry I didn't see it then." Mom followed with her own gesture, a homemade pie delivered to my doorstep. No pressure to share it with anyone else. Just a simple note. "Thank you for saving us from lies." Those messages didn't erase the past, but they marked a turning point, parents finally acknowledging that justice can coexist with love. Let's talk symbols again, because they matter. The pen. Once a weapon of betrayal, now a badge of self-determination. I signed my own mortgage papers, with it proof that my signature, my identity, would never be stolen again. The police report. A stark reminder that sometimes rules exist to protect the vulnerable, even if they feel harsh. I revisit it only when I need to remember I'm allowed to stand up for myself. The restitution checks. Each one a small victory, a tangible acknowledgement that actions have consequences. Natalie's first check felt like a handshake across a chasm. I often think about the American dream.
the house with a white picket fence, the belief that hard work and integrity pay off. But what if someone else tries to buy that dream using your name? What happens when the very system promising opportunity turns a blind eye until you fight back?
My story isn't just about identity theft. It's about reclaiming respect, demanding accountability, and reconstructing trust on your own terms.
What about Natalie? She's doing better. Her students love her passion. She volunteers for a domestic violence helpline. She attends therapy groups twice a week and has become an advocate for victims of identity fraud. But we're not best friends again. We're cautious allies. We share coffee, not bedrooms. We share boundaries, not bank accounts. Redemption, I learned, isn't about wiping the slate clean. It's about writing a new chapter with honesty, effort, and genuine remorse. A month ago, I received another envelope from Natalie. No letter this time, just a photograph. It was a picture of her standing outside a Habitat for Humanity build site, holding a hammer. The caption scrawled on the back read, "Building homes the right way." I held that photo against my heart. It was her symbolic promise, no more shortcuts. No more theft, just real work, real sweat, building something authentic. I haven't framed that yet. Maybe I will. Here's what I want you to take away. Justice is not vendetta. It's ensuring fairness, even when it hurts. Boundaries aren't walls. They're the gates that let the right people in and keep the rest out. Forgiveness is optional, but compassion, recognizing that everyone is flawed, can be a step toward your own peace. We've reached the end of this saga, but the lessons live on. Will I ever fully trust Natalie again? I don't know. Maybe one day, when her actions prove her words. Trust is a currency you earn, not inherit. And my final symbol, the little shadow box, reminds me of that every single day. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, a friend, a partner, a sibling, know that you have the right to protect yourself. You have the right to demand accountability. And you have the right to rebuild your life on your own terms. Thank you for watching all 7 parts of my story. If this resonated, please like this video to let others know they're not alone. Share your experiences in the comments. What boundaries did you have to set? And subscribe for more stories of overcoming betrayal and reclaiming your life. Because sometimes, the bravest act is refusing to stay silent and believing you deserve better. Stay strong, stay true, and remember, you are the author of your own life.